Hey class, welcome to week 11. So this marks kind of our second week of real intensive work on Project 4, which is your research proposal. Now, by now you should have started to grasp at least a little bit what this assignment is actually asking you to do. And if you're still confused, then go back to the video that I posted for week 10 and take a look at that. And obviously feel free to email me questions and things like that. But overall, what we're doing here is now it's your turn to enter into the conversation that you've been talking about and writing about for the last 5, 6, 7 weeks. And so what this means is that the majority of our work is going to come from and be based on the literature review that you just turned in. Now, I want to say quickly that I've begun returning those to you guys. So if you don't have yours back yet, you'll have it back, tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest, so that way you have it for for your project moving forward before any kind of rough draft is due. So what I want to do today is I want to talk a little bit about what the purpose of week 11 is and what the work that you'll be doing this week will help us achieve in terms of Project 4. And so you'll see that we've got a couple readings going on in terms of developing an argument and selecting and integrating evidence. Now, both of these are going to be really crucial to your success in this project, not because there's like a quiz on it or anything like that, but because they're really getting at the skills and the strategies that you'll want to employ when you start, thinking about how you want to revise or bring in, or what parts of your literature review you want to bring in order to support a new argument that you want to make. And so I want to stress that, the purpose of doing that literature review in Project 3 was for you to have a pool of evidence to pull from and to deploy here in Project 4. Now, what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to post a really detailed walkthrough of an example of Project 4. But for now, kind of go back to the video that I posted last week, go back to the examples that are posted and take a look at those, and you'll see how that literature review fits in. But on to this week. So we've got our readings that are really going to help you figure out how to bring evidence in, how to do it effectively, and things like that. The other thing that you have available for this week is there's an optional Skype conference. Obviously, you're always free to schedule a Skype conference with me. I just put it here to remind you because you're doing so much work. Also, it doesn't have to be on Friday. It can be any day essentially. And then also we have a blog due. And so I'll talk about those here in a minute. Now, the literature reviews that I've returned so far, I've been really pleased with. This is a tough assignment, and a lot of you are doing a really good job of synthesizing your evidence, of showing the conversation, of making connections between all those sources, and that's exactly what I wanted to see. And so what we're going to do for this week is we're going to start to think about how you want to use that evidence to build an argument. So by now you should have at least some idea of how you want to respond to the literature review, what kind of argument you want to make. Remember, this is stuff we talked about in the CARS model stuff from last week. It's what I talked about in the video. What kind of space do you want to occupy? Do you want to respond to someone by disagreeing with them? Do you want to agree with one of your experts and argue for an extension of what they do? Do you want to say, and propose a study together for the research because we don't have enough? So whatever the space is that you want to occupy, you should have a good sense of that by now. And so what Blog 8 is going to do is it's going to ask you to think about how you want to take all of that evidence and all of that synthesis work you just did and used in Project 3, how you want to take that and make it work to support a brand new argument. Now, I keep saying that you'll be revising parts of the literature review. And now, I'm not just talking about simple things like, oh, you misspelled a word here or whatever. I'm talking about making the literature review actually function in a way that supports the argument that you now want to present. So what I was really pleased with in your literature review is that for the most part, none of you really tried to put forth an argument of your own, right? You were just focused on reviewing the current literature. But now that we do want to make an argument and we want to use that literature review for that argument, there are some things that you'll have to do to make it work. And so as part of the video that I'll post for the walkthrough, I'll show you guys how to revise your literature review. But essentially what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that every part of the literature review that you want to bring in is related to that argument in some way. Now, this might mean you might cut some sources because they don't apply to this argument you want to make, and it might mean that you expand your discussion of some sources. But essentially, what you're really going to have to do is make sure that as you discuss all of these sources, that they are all building towards your main argument. And so let's take a look at your blog for this week. Now, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be making what's called Cornell notes. And essentially what this is it's kind of a brainstorming session for you that should get you thinking about how you want to, use the evidence that you've come up with. Because, you've spent all semester gathering evidence. And so this will ask you, how do you want to use that to make your own argument? And so here's how we're going to do it. For this blog post, you're going to upload a set of notes, and this could just be a Word doc, in which you identify key pieces of evidence from the sources you're using in your research proposal and describe how, where, and why you'll use these sources in the proposal. This video for this week will walk you through strategies for completing the assignment, and the assigned chapters from the Wordsworth Guide will help you think about where and how to use evidence. So we're looking for at least 15 entries. Now that doesn't mean 15 sources, right? I'm talking about like 15 pieces of evidence, so 15 quotes or 15 moments in any and all of the evidence that you've gathered so far that you think would work well to support the argument. And so you're totally free to pull all the stuff out of your literature review that you've already gathered and say, like, look, I want to use this stuff. Here's 15 quotes that I found, or here's 15 moments out of all my research that I found that I think works really well. And so what you'll do is essentially you're going to compile them into a list. And it's kind of similar to the annotated bibliography in that I'm asking you to think about how you want to use evidence before you actually get to it. And so, for example, what you'll do is you'll bring it into like a Word document and you'll say, source 1 with your quote. And so let's say, the how, like, okay, so this presents a lot of history and background for the issue that I think the reader needs to There we go. So, for example, you might have source 1. Here's a quote, and this source presents a lot of history or background for the issue that I think the reader needs to understand why my argument is important. Okay, that's all I'm looking for, right? So, how, where, and why. And so that kind of presents all that. How, I'm going to use it to present history. Where, probably in the intro, right? Or introducing the topic, whatever. And the why is right there too. And so again, this isn't like a long drawn out thing, but that's how I want you to start to think about it. It's like source 2. Here's our quote. And it has a lot of data that I need to blah, 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 blah. Right, so like, for example, quote 2 has a lot of data that I think I could really work with in my argument. Quote 3, quote 4, essentially, And so that's all we're looking for. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out, paragraph form thing like you did for the annotated bibliography. All we're looking for is just quick brainstorming for this project, right? Start to think about how everything fits together, or start to think about like the evidence that you've just gathered. And this is the important part. Start to think about the evidence that you just gathered and synthesized in your literature review. Okay, how do you want to make that work for an argument, right? Instead, because now that your purpose has changed, you're going to have to change the literature review to fit your new purpose. Okay, so whereas in the first case you organized an entire essay just to talk about other people, now you're organizing an entire essay around your idea, and so you're going to have to figure out what do you want to bring in and how do you want to make it work. Okay, so this is a really good first baby step toward revising your literature review. Okay, so don't need to save that. All right, so just to recap then, that's really all we've got going this week is just your Cornell notes. So make sure you upload those. Now, like I said, I'm in the process of returning your literature review, so you'll have those back, tomorrow or Wednesday. And what I've been doing on each of those literature reviews is I've been putting really specific comments in the margins, like, look, this is something that you could revise, and here's how for literature review. So when you get it back, my comments will be geared toward making changes for the benefit of Project 4. Obviously, if you still have questions after that or about those comments, you're totally free to contact me, but that's where we're going. And so once I have your literature review graded and back to you, I'll move on to your introductions. So you'll have your introductions that you wrote back by the end of the week. So that way, by the time we get to Sunday, you'll be good to go to start to think about really putting this thing together. All right. So like I said, if you do have any questions, obviously feel free to email me, and I will look forward to it. All right. Have a good day, guys. Bye.